We have time for questions from the audience. I'm just going to ask one myself before we start to Maikel. On May 23 and 24, there are presidential elections in Egypt. And as I understand, the main candidates are either leftovers from the Mubarak era, like Amma Musa, the former foreign minister, or they're Islamists. Are you disappointed that they don't seem to be more secular, liberal, centrist candidates who seem to have a chance at the presidency? And I'll just combine that with a question from a member of the audience, from Abir Asalani of the Liberal International. She asks, the Egyptian youth were the ones who started the revolution in Egypt, but now the youth seems not to be participating in the political process. Why is that?
Okay. For presidential election, I don't see that we are having an election. It's a show, it's a play, it's a movie. It's not a real election, because free elections means that anyone can join and run for presidency, and this wasn't happen because the law of election was issued by the military, and they made a law which are made especially for someone who was with him in their sides. So we are having two parts in these elections. One part is the ex-militaries or military alliance, and the other part is Islamists, and both are the same parts of the same regime. So it is not an election, and even we don't have the principles which can provide that it is a free election without any fraud or corruption, because we don't have any international observation over the election, and even the small details with the election with the conditions on running for the election and the database of voters. There are lots of questions about it, and for myself, when I see an election which someone like Ahmed Zouel, he is a Nobel Prize winner and he's supporting peace and he can't run for election. Like someone like Ayman Noor, and he's a civilian activist. He is a leader of Liberal Party, and he was a former presidential candidate, and he was very popular, and also he can't run for presidency. And someone like Mohammed Abu Hamid, he is from Masrin Ahrar Party, which means Free Egyptian Party, and he also can't run for presidency because he is under 40. So if they are excluding all civilian and liberal activists from the election to make it just to have to choose between ex-militarists and Islamists. So this is not a free election, and for myself, I'm boycotting this, and I think revolutionaries in the streets in Egypt are raising the slogan, no presidential election under military governance, and the military should deliver the power to a free and neutral authority who can run the election in a proper manner to make it really free. But according to the steps which we had in parliament and we are having in the presidential election next months, I'm not believing it's a free election. About the other question was?
The question was that the young people in Egypt seem to have led the revolution, and yet they seem to be more absent now from the political process. Is that true, and if so, why?
Okay, this is the nature of things, that if the political process is democratic, every part of the society will be represented and will be shared in the political process, and if it is a dictatorship or an oligarchy, like what it is in Egypt, so it is the natural result of this, that youth and liberals and seculars and civilian activists can't participate in this process because it is a type of oligarchy. You have to be one of their friends to be able to reach power. And look at the past year. While me, myself, and other civilian activists were military tried and spent months in prisons, while someone like Aboud Zumar and others who shared in killing former President Mohammed Sadat are becoming stars in televisions every day, and nobody is questioning their comments and their speeches to the media and the opinions they are spreading and their funds and how they what is the amount of funds they get from the Gulf, while other civilian NGOs are usually persecuted and there are always cases around them and the propaganda are attacking them every day, saying that they work for external agendas and for international conspiracy over the country and things like that. So if you can't have a free competing environment, how we can call it a free election and how we expect from it as a result to see that the youth who made the revolution participating in this process.
I'll just ask one more question first. What? You don't want to answer? What? Okay. No, wait a sec. How many people want to ask questions? Do lots of people? Sorry? Okay. I'll just ask one general question while I'm waiting, which is to both of you. If you are disappointed with the reaction of the West, in particular the United States government, to Ebrahim after the June 2009 election, many people have criticized President Obama, who had only been in office for less than half a year, as still being rather conciliatory, rather too soft on the government. He's maybe hardened since, but by not being harder in June 2009, he gave the regime possibly more time to institute the crackdown that it's continuing. And then I'll ask you first, and then afterwards also likewise, Egypt gets billions of dollars in American aid. Are you satisfied with the Obama administration and the European Union in their approach to the present Egyptian authorities? But you want to help? Okay. He's a very distinguished German-Iranian journalist who speaks fluent English as well as Persian.
Ebrahim John, Tom.
Tom has just asked you actually by not reacting strongly to the Iranian government's re-election at the time, he gave more time for the Iranian government for its crackdown. What is your viewpoint? Well, yes, Mr. Obama actually lost an opportunity to react to what was happening on the streets of Iran, but he kept quiet, he kept silent. And this silence, unfortunately, allowed the government to reassert itself. Of course, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of America did express its disagreement with the Iranian governments, but it did not go further than that. And the greatest difficulty was that it created actually a wall. The confidence in the West has been weakened. This is also true for Syria. The West is watching what is happening. Daily people are getting killed in Syria, and what we are doing is we are witnessing. Governments of Iran can, for instance, send armaments to Syria, to the government, and this is very painful to know.
So just to repeat for Maikel, the Americans, because they've been close allies, if that's the word, with Egypt in the last 30, 40 years, and because Egypt still has enormous amounts of military and civilian aid, America has a certain amount of pressure points on the military government. Are you disappointed that they don't appear to be using them?
Okay, I can answer with two things. The first is that we can't be disappointed because we don't have any other solution. As long as this regime continues, my life and my family and my friends will be at continuous risk. And we can't live with that fact. So this, for our safety and for our freedom, we should get rid of this regime. And so we don't have the choice to be disappointed. The other thing is that anyone who supports a dictatorship will pay for it and is paying for it. When the United States is supporting the Egyptian army and giving it weapons and giving it military aids, financial aids, but in return, what happened? That the American organizations acting in Egypt are accused by the Egyptian military of being spying and trying to divide the country and to destroy the country, and American citizens who are living in Egypt are at continuously risk, and some of them were living like hostages. They are not allowed to leave the country, and this anti-American propaganda which running in state-owned media channels against the United States and its decisions. So I think if United States, and when we look lots of terrorist actions like 11th of September, how many Egyptians were participating in these actions, and how is the results of Egyptian fundamentalists spreading ideas against United States. So I think if United States is supporting this dictatorship, she's paying the price for that, and the Americans must know this, and the same for maybe some European countries, because other European countries were accused with American organizations in the case of the NGOs, and even Israel, it supported the military council in Egypt during the last year, and also it risked the lives of its own citizens, and one of its citizens will be accused to be a spy, which is Ebrahim Mehtari, and there are the terrorists who passed to Eilat and killed Israelis. So supporting a dictatorship isn't a pragmatic thing, because you will pay for it. And this is not a threat and not my decision, but is a direct result of raising a wolf in your house.
Nevertheless, even if the elections were not free and fair, and liberal and moderate groups were not given proper time to organize and proper time to campaign and proper access and so on, the Islamist parties did undoubtedly garner many votes. According to the results, it's a big majority, but even if those results aren't quite clear, it's still a great number. Are you not concerned that if the military give up power too quickly, the Islamists, who are possibly better organized and greater in number, will manage to seize power, and in fact the situation for liberals and moderates could be even worse than it is today?
Okay. First of all, we can't stand against democracy feeling from that. Because feeling from democracy and standing against democracy wouldn't make it better, because as long as this regime continues, it is becoming worse every day. And if someone seen pictures for Egypt 6 decades or maybe 5 decades ago, he wouldn't have seen this rise of Islamists. And Egypt was a secular society, and religious and ethnic minorities were living freely in Egypt without any discrimination. So every day this regime is lasting, it's becoming worse. And leaving it like that, it means that it will become worse every day, and it won't be able, we can reach to the limit of no return. And we are avoiding this. The other thing I'm saying, democracy is a democracy. We can't, we are not supposed to invent a new democracy. So democracy means free election. Democracy means equal opportunities. Democracy means the state of law. We can't allow a terrorist to run for presidency and in the same time put a writer or an opinion thinker in prison for his opinion. I think that all religious minorities now in Egypt are threatened by a law which is named insulting of religions. Karim Amr was jailed before 4 years because a blog post he wrote about criticizing Islam. And during the last year, several bloggers and activists were imprisoned for maybe a comment on Facebook or a picture posted on Facebook. And some of them are imprisoned for 3 years. And we have new verdicts with 6 years for a few words. And these accusations are made only against minorities and civilian activists, while fanatics and Islamic fundamentalists are using a very racist propaganda against minorities and against non-believers. So this is not a free environment for election. So if they are putting the circumstances to unfree environment, which will bring a new fascism, could be a military, could be a oligarchy, could be an Islamic, but it will be a new fascism. This isn't a democracy. Democracy is providing equal chances to every party and making a new condition of law which punish the criminal and give the innocents their rights.
I'll just ask you one more question, so the translator then afterwards I'll ask Ebrahim. It's from Marie-Therese. She has a two-part question. Can people who are in this room, such as students and others, help you? How can they help you? Do you have specific practical ideas for how they can help you? And then a second question from her, on a personal note, was there a particular moment that prompted you to change your life and become an activist? Because you were studying to be a vet before you became an activist. So just repeat, what can people here practically do? And secondly, was there a particular incident or moment that made you become an activist?
Okay, I mentioned what we can do in my the last points on my speech. The first of thing, we have to say it loudly. We don't let them to silence activists, peace activists, freedom activists, democracy activists, human rights activists. We have to publicize every violation happens because anyone who makes a crime, he knows it's a crime. He knows that he may be punished because of it, and he fears from that. So if we publicize their crimes, they will fear to repeat it, and that's how we protecting our other persons from being violated also. I think that every dictator fears from the destiny of Saddam Hussein and from the destiny of Muammar Gaddafi and don't want to be in his position. So taking legal steps against dictatorships in international institutions, lobbying for that, speaking out loudly about these violations, well, if it couldn't reach to an international situation and action toward any dictatorship, at least it will make this dictatorship fears from being punished, and this will make them lower the limits of their violations. Also, we shouldn't be isolated, because every dictatorship in Iran, in Vietnam, in Burma, in Egypt, they are trying to isolate us from the world, to let us owing only to depend on our local resources without being able to contact with international institutions, with international activists from around the world, and to make the regime and the government is the only representative of the people, so that they can spread all the false opinions they want to spread about the reality of things which happen on grounds. So building connections between activists around the world, even with societies with completely different in religions, in political directions. This connection is a type of immunity for activists, because if they knew that these activists have strong connections, they will think 1,000 times before arresting him or doing anything against him. And if something happened, these connections help for a rapid action, rescuing his life, or at least minimizing the price he have to pay for his opinions. My personal life, lots of things was disturbed and delayed during the months I spent in prison. So I'm spending some time to reorganize my life, recontrol my life, continuing my studies in political science. I'm not going to continue as a vet. Also, my movement needs to rebuild again, because it was harshly attacked. Our activists were harshly attacked by the military during the last year. So we are regrouping again, and we are providing the full support to Egyptians who are asking for the right in conscientious objection to the military service, who are refusing to carry weapons and refusing to kill any other human being. And these people are completely abandoned locally and internationally, and Egypt don't fulfill its commitment to the International Convention to Civil and Political Rights. So we are supporting them, trying to make their case more obvious and more clearer, and give them the political and legal support to avoid having them in prison and passing through the hard experiences we have passed during the past days.
Well, we just got one question for Ebrahim, and then there was a question from a Moroccan blogger I wanted to ask afterwards. It's from Razi Golan. He asks again about the nuclear program. How do you think the nuclear program, the Iranian nuclear program, might be stopped? That's his question. You did partially deal with this already, so I'll just also ask a second one, which is, are you optimistic for the future, let's say 5 years from now or 10 years from now? Do you think the Islamic Republic of Iran will no longer be an Islamic republic?
Well, the question was in two parts. The first part about the nuclear program of Iran. A part of it are news, which is introduced by International Atomic Agency, or by about the reports of the inspectors who were inspecting it. Well, I can tell you that for the time being, it does not have nuclear weapons, because if it had already those weapons, it would already be using that card, like Pakistan, like Northern Korea, and like India. It would have been using that influence now. But I do not believe that Iran has now enough materials in order to produce a nuclear bomb. But it is making efforts to improve its knowledge, which is necessary in order to enable it in the future to have such knowledge. Yes, if it had been a very stable government, a stable state, we would all be very happy about it, because that would be leading to a good development. But if we are dealing with a government which is speaking with its firearms with its own population in the streets, that could not be trusted with such power. Now I go back to the second part of your question. I am not a specialist on blogs. I cannot know what is going to happen in Iran, even in 5 years' time. But people of our country are striving towards a stable democracy with lesser impact on religion. What you can find among the commoners in Iran, among the population, is not something special. In Iran, we did not look for too much. The people started walking in the street asking, what happened to my vote? Where is my vote? That was it. Today, yes, they would like to change the regime, but in those days, it was only asking what happened to the vote. I would be in favor of a secular government in Iran. To what extent my opinion coincides with the opinion of the population of Iran, I cannot tell you.
Okay, because we're nearing the end of this session, I promised Kassam, who's a Moroccan blogger and activist, he wanted to ask a question. Why don't you just come up and ask it?
Thank you. My name is Kassem, and Switzerland is my home of exile. I'm here like now a year since I moved from my country, Morocco. So I have a message for all of you here, and this message came from a group of peaceful warriors who are really now fighting for freedom and for democracy, and democracy which guarantee that the next constitution that we hope for gonna be a secular constitution, not something religious as we have now in Tunisia or in Egypt. So I will read it. It's very short, for like 1 minute. So this was written by an 11-year-old girl who all her family got tortured by the Moroccan regime. It was in Arabic and then translated it to English. So, dear audience, let me tell you about Morocco. What I'm going to tell you about now is a country you never heard about before. I'm not going to talk about Marrakesh or Casablanca or Fez, where many of you might go to spend a few days in 5-star hotel. But I will talk about a country where people live in toilets, where children die from the freezing winter, where the doctors and PhD holders burn themselves in front of the parliament because of employment and poverty. Just a few weeks ago, young activists of the 20 February movement, the movement which came after the revolution in Tunisia as a call for democracy, liberty, human rights, and individual liberties. These activists got tortured, arrested without charges, and some others kidnapped and killed by the police in several cities of Morocco. Just 4 days ago, the same fascism and sadism repeats itself in Ait Bouayesh, another city in the north of Morocco, a city where the majority of the populations are Berber, just like me. So nobody, a city where the majority of people are Berber, the city got surrounded by the police from all its sides, so nobody were able to run away from the organized violence, which didn't differentiate between women, children, or elder people. We have a lack of information and updates about this for the world, because the police shut down the internet cafes and no one from the journalists or even from the human rights activists could get to the city. This is what's happening right now in Morocco, and unfortunately, in front of the silence and the horrible, the horrible silence of international media and human rights organizations. Peace from Morocco, Sarah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ebrahim and Maikel, both of them very brave and courageous young men. And now